A cordial greeting. Today is Sunday, August 17, 2025. This is meteorologist Ruben Garcia. At the time of recording this video, it is 7:30 in the evening, local time in the northeastern Caribbean, where we continue closely monitoring the evolution of Hurricane Erin, which has remained a Category 3 hurricane throughout today, and continues with maximum sustained winds of 125 miles per hour. Currently, the center of circulation is located north of the Dominican Republic, and little by little the weather conditions are beginning to improve across the northern Leeward Islands and Puerto Rico, where Erin had been bringing heavy rain and winds that caused some flooding and problems with electrical service. In this first part of the video, I will give a brief update on the forecast for Hurricane Erin, and in the second half of the video I would like to provide more details on the next tropical wave, which already has a medium probability of cyclonic development over the next 7 days as it moves through the tropical Atlantic. It is important for residents of the Leeward Islands and Puerto Rico to closely monitor the evolution of this next tropical wave. But let's briefly return to Hurricane Erin. If we zoom in on the infrared satellite animation, we can see that the hurricane is close to completing the eye wall replacement cycle, which was the cause of its weakening over the last 24 hours. However, as this process takes place, the circulation of the hurricane is becoming broader, and as it moves toward the north-northwest, the extent of tropical storm and hurricane force winds should continue expanding. In fact, now that the eye wall replacement cycle seems to be ending, it is projected to begin re-intensifying and could once again become a Category 4 hurricane within the next 24 hours. Also, notice that it is already starting to clear out a rather large eye, approximately 50 to 75 miles in diameter. So, while on one hand the hurricane lost some intensity in terms of maximum sustained winds during the eye wall replacement process, the extent of tropical storm force winds has expanded significantly. This is why a tropical storm warning has been issued for the Turks and Caicos Islands and for the southern Bahamas, where winds between 40 to 50 miles per hour could affect the region over the next 24 hours. Notice that the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center has had few changes. It is forecast that Hurricane Erin will remain a major hurricane until at least Wednesday afternoon, and fortunately, it will maintain a track over Atlantic waters without directly impacting the U.S. East Coast or Bermuda. Still, some indirect effects will be felt across these areas. As the hurricane takes that northward track, its size will continue increasing, as seen in the following animation showing the wind gust projection according to the European model. You can see that between Tuesday and Wednesday, as it passes between North Carolina and Bermuda, the extent of tropical storm force winds will be such that some winds between 35 to 40 miles per hour may be felt along parts of the U.S. East Coast and in Bermuda. So, although hurricane force winds and the worst conditions will remain over the Atlantic waters, there is a possibility that a tropical storm watch or warning may be issued for these areas in the middle of this week. And although in terms of rain and wind it should not cause major issues, what does concern us is the strong swell that will be affecting the eastern and southeastern United States, the Bahamas, Bermuda, and the Turks and Caicos Islands. In some areas, waves may reach 15 to 18 feet in height, so great caution is needed along the coasts in these areas, as dangerous rip currents and strong surf are expected, which will cause severe coastal erosion. Now then, let's talk about the next tropical wave, which may pose a threat to the eastern Caribbean by the end of this week. Currently, the tropical wave is located near longitude 30 degrees west, and you can see that at the moment it lacks cyclonic organization, and doesn't even have an area of thunderstorms along the wave axis, meaning any cyclonic development should be rather slow over the next 5 days. However, the atmospheric conditions do seem favorable for at least gradual organization. This is largely because a Kelvin wave, represented by the blue lines, will be crossing the tropical Atlantic and leaving favorable conditions in the atmosphere for this tropical wave to achieve cyclonic organization. So much so that the National Hurricane Center, in its 8 p.m. Tropical Outlook update, has increased to 40% the probability of cyclonic development over the next 7 days as it approaches the northeastern Caribbean. Notice that this potential development zone begins near longitude 45 degrees west, and that is because initially the tropical wave will be crossing over relatively cool sea surface temperatures. However, once it passes longitude 45 degrees west, it will encounter temperatures between 27 to 28 degrees Celsius. And it is in this area where it may begin to generate convection and have some type of development. So, the important thing is to know how close it might get to the northeastern Caribbean. I can tell you that the latest projections are somewhat favorable in the sense that it could take a northwestward turn before reaching the Caribbean, although I must clarify that this projection has a large margin of error. But let's see what the global models show. Let's start with the projection of the American model. It is not until Wednesday night that it begins to show some type of cyclonic development once it crosses longitude 50 degrees west. In the latest run, It shows this system organizing as it moves over the northern Leeward Islands and Puerto Rico between Friday and Saturday, but at least it keeps the system quite weak, as a tropical depression or weak tropical storm. On the other hand, we have the European model projection, which also shows some type of cyclonic organization when it reaches longitude 50 degrees west. But unlike the American model, the European model continues to project that it could have a track a bit more to the northwest and eventually pass northeast of the Caribbean. Today's midday projection has a weak tropical storm moving north of the Leeward Islands during the morning hours of Saturday. It is worth mentioning that the European model has been very consistent in showing that this system could gain latitude before reaching the Leeward Islands. This would definitely be the best case scenario, and like the American model, it at least keeps it quite weak. Meanwhile, the German model projection, similar to the American and European models, begins to develop the system as it crosses between 50 and 55 degrees west, and in the latest run it shows the system approaching the northern Leeward Islands during the afternoon or evening hours of Friday. Notice that it also agrees that it will be a rather weak system and very different from what we saw with Hurricane Erin. And the UK model continues projecting a track quite toward the northwest, passing about 200 miles northeast of the Caribbean, also as a tropical depression or weak tropical storm. So definitely, throughout today we have seen a trend that as it approaches the Caribbean, it may gain latitude and, with a little luck, pass northeast of the Leeward Islands and Puerto Rico. This is also supported by the ensemble members of the European model, most of which maintain that northwestward component just before entering the Caribbean. And if this scenario occurs, it would definitely be favorable. And although this does seem to be good news, it is important that we do not let our guard down because, for example, the ensemble members of the American model have a track much closer to the northeastern Caribbean. Many of the members bring this system over the northern Leeward Islands and Puerto Rico, while the members of Google's AI model coincide with the projections of the European models with a more northwestward track. So, in summary, what can I tell you? It is important that in the northeastern Caribbean we stay alert to this tropical wave. We still do not know exactly how far or close it could pass to the region. What we do know is that at least its organization should be rather slow and will really begin once it crosses longitude 50 degrees west. And very preliminarily, the trends seem quite favorable that it could pass just northeast of the Caribbean. But again, I clarify, it is too soon to know. We first need to see how it behaves over the next few days and where it manages to consolidate that center of circulation. Well, here at Hurricane Info I will continue monitoring the evolution of this tropical wave. We will also continue closely following the progress of Hurricane Erin as it moves through the southwestern Atlantic. And so that you don't miss our content, I invite you to like this video. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the bell so that you receive notifications when I record new videos. I hope you all have an excellent start to the week. I'll see you tomorrow.